There's a lot of stress around at the moment, and one thing leads to another. There's sort of a flow on.
Yeah, Rob, this is because of how the body's organised. And the founder of chiropractic, a guy called Daniel David Palmer, was a very revolutionary thinker of his time. I mean, we're talking here 100 years ago. He came up with this idea that on top of all the cybernetic systems that run the body, like for instance, we know if your blood sugar goes up, your body will release insulin so as to cause the cells to take up sugar and therefore bring the blood sugar back down again, and then it suppresses the release of insulin. Now, that's called a cybernetic system. It's a simple feedback loop, you know, and the body temperature does the same thing, and digestion does the same thing with stretch receptors in your stomach and your bowel and all that, setting up peristalsis and all of that. But above all that, Palmer noted, was a degree of control. And he also realised that it was unconscious. You know, you don't go around thinking, liver working 98%, very good.
No, you don't.
Well, you and I probably haven't had a liver that worked at 98% for years anyway. It's because of the way you push that Scottish spirit into me. But he said that this unconscious management of the body, he called it innate intelligence. And what it does is, and he said it relates to our conscious interpretation of the world, which he called educated intelligence, but conscious and unconscious is sort of the way to think of it. And so when we look at stress, right, what that is our interpretation of the world saying, this is not a good situation. This represents risk, chronic risk, uncertainty, threat, all these things that trigger a stress response. Innate intelligence then converts all of that into different management systems for the body. So instead of running the body as at its high efficiency level, minimum energy loss, right, which isn't a problem now because most of us suffer from energy overload, not energy loss. But when we were a savanna dwelling animal like any other, we had to be efficient. So he ran it at, the body ran at high efficiency, but it does that at the price of performance. Now, when you're under stress, we try to run at high performance, which we do at the price of energy. The difficulty is that the system was designed to operate where those triggers were at a very, very set time period. You know, you might move into a predator zone, or there might be a drought or whatever. It might go for months, but it didn't go for years. And like, for instance, here in Christchurch, we are now 5 years post-earthquake. About the same time as Daniel David Palmer, right, in 1910, not long after that, New Zealand, almost single-handedly, with a wee bit of help from the Australians, managed to cross the oceans, defeat the Austro-Hungarian Empire and the Ottoman Empire, get home. We did it all in 4.5 years.
Well, there you are.
And we didn't even have machinery. We did it all with horses.
So when the door slams and you jump.
Well, then you see the other thing too is he used the term intelligence, and what we know about intelligence is not only does it plan and forward think, but it learns. And so the circumstances around you at the time set up how you're likely to respond because you've become accustomed to it. And it's a bit like the stuffy room, you don't even notice it, you know. So you don't notice that your back's or shoulders are all tightened up, that you don't notice your gut is gurgling and has sort of lost its good habits and all those sorts of things. They just become a part of your everyday. It's only when they get to a critical point where they're going to cause potential long-term damage that we experience symptoms like nausea or pain or discomfort. And what that is in fact your unconscious mind telling your conscious mind, you better do something.
That's right, because if you're in a very bad environment, your stomach will not.
It will, and that's simply, and everything about that was actually quite useful. I mean, you're increasing your gastric secretion, you're shutting down, which is increasing the amount of acid in the stomach, which is therefore means if you end up swallowing some mud or dirt or whatever in the scrap, you've got more acid in there to kill the bugs. You're shutting down food leaving the gut, the pyloric sphincter, and at the other end of the small intestine, you're shutting down food moving into the large intestine through the ileocecal valve. Now, that purpose is to shut down digestion so you can shunt blood away from the gut and put it into the muscles and the brain and the heart, all of which were critical to a fight-flight response, you see. Not good if it goes on for a long time, because then the gut starts to engage in dysfunction and you get all those symptoms that come out of chronic stress, you know, loose stools, constipation, gas and wind, bloating,
all those things that, yeah, but they sneak up on you. You said
They sneak up on you. And then what happens is you get very close to failure, and then you have a bit of a food that might challenge you a wee bit. And what you go is you go, oh, that caused it. It must have been that. Whenever I hear the word must have been, I know that isn't it.
yeah, right. Because you've talked to me about pulling a pair of socks on and putting your back out. It's got nothing to do with your feet.
Absolutely not. No. What it means is that, you know, your diaphragm's not working because you're suppressing your emotional control by controlling your breathing. You know, your gut's probably a bit dodgy, so you can't put too much weight through your abdomen anyway. You haven't been sleeping that well, so you're suffering from a chronic overall muscle fatigue and neurological fatigue, which means the integration of the nerves and muscles isn't working that well. And then you go and put a sock on, and your body weight's in the wrong position, and you actually do some low-grade soft tissue damage, or you blow a disc, in which case you've done some serious soft tissue damage, and you're up for surgery. And so these things are never the final event, unless it's something big like parachute failure. We go, yeah, it's probably mechanical.
That is a bit sort of,
you know, but
if it's slightly external influence there.
Yeah. If it's the banal everyday stuff, and you didn't cope with it, then it's because all this stuff is built up behind it.
Ever wondered why a parachutist who's going feet first wears a helmet?
No, but that is a good point. I think we'll put it this way, right? By the time your helmet counts, things are bad.
Yeah, exactly. So people, any one of those symptoms that you've just been describing, what do they do? What do people do? Or if they're watching somebody who...
Or they're seeing that happen to someone in their family. Yeah, I mean, the rural sector, I actually feel the rural sector's got just a little bit of positive in it right now. You know, as long as we don't get this severe El Nino drought.
Which is here.
Which is, yeah. So North Canterbury, there's probably not a lot of positive still. But I think when you see these things happening, the first thing is to recognise that the social presentation, you know, the behaviour and the grumpiness and the shortness and all that, they are merely the surface manifestations. It's important to recognise that this person is under chronic stress and help them recognise they're under chronic stress. And a bit of it, you know, the ad for Lifeline where they showed the giant snowball, and, you know, and then the person catches it in their hand and actually realise that it's not as big as they thought it was. You know, most farmers are still sitting on a massive piece of equity, and so if they're under that sort of pressure, just sit back and think and go, well, you know, no one's making more land. Well, the Chinese are, but, you know, but that's way the hell up near the Philippines.
It is.
So you don't have to worry about it.
Well past the airport.
Yeah, long past, yeah.
So really, it's just recognise it and accept it.
Yeah, and do the positive things, you know. Look, Rob, you'd be surprised when I talk to patients how many don't go to bed on time, how many don't drink water, you know, how many don't take a break on a long weekend like the one we've just had. You know, or they can think of a break as vegetating in front of the television. You know, we've got to get out there and do positive things, because life's not just about addressing the negatives, it's also about doing the things that help buffer us against the traumas of everyday life.